Hi everyone, and welcome to Talking Family History with Fiona and Michelle. And Michelle, it is so nice to be back with everyone, isn't it?
It sure is. And it's summer for us, winter for everybody else. And I don't know where I am because it was snowing in Salt Lake when I left a couple of days ago.
Yeah, but now you're not in Salt Lake City any longer. You're back in the sunny coast of Australia.
Yep, I'm up at Port Macquarie, and we've listened to all of you saying the news, we miss it. And so we're back, and here's the news.
It sure is. So let's get this party started. So jumping through to the news from the 17th of March. Happy St. Patrick's Day, Michelle.
Yeah, and all the luck of the Irish, and may the road rise up to greet you on your journeys.
Fantastic. So as usual, we're going to start with some updates from all of those main websites that we know you love and use in your research. So let's go to start off with straight into Ancestry. We're going to do a slightly longer news today because it's been a while since we've given you any updates. And so we want to make sure that you don't miss anything that was out there. You'll see on Ancestry this week, we've got a couple of new databases in there. I especially like that business number data set there that's got 16 million records, Michelle.
Yeah, very nice.
But I also like the fact that Ancestry now has the Registrar General's indexes of birth, deaths and marriages in New Zealand, which means you're able to search by person and their parents for births, for example. Jumping around the world over to the other side of the world from us here, who probably are sleeping at the moment, there are some nice records coming through from Westminster, some more poor law records. And I don't know about you, but I really like poor law records. They add a lot of colour to our families' lives. But also if you're starting to get into some different places in Europe, like there's a huge collection there from Finland, Russia, Karelia. So, you know, church records in that earlier period of time as well. And then jumping through again, didn't want you to miss out if you've got people from Berkshire, from Kensington, some German records in there as well. Over in the Americas, we're looking at huge collections coming through from the newspapers as we're using some of the technology that's out there now to get some of that detail into record sets that we're actually able to search. Plus there's some nice little marriages from New Jersey down the bottom there as well.
That's one or two records too, a couple of million. So over at FamilySearch, as many of you know, huge extensive record collection that have been digitized and are gradually being indexed. So the index numbers show here, and you'll see a strong focus on Southern America. But if we there is a little bit of Russia and Finland, some German records that might be interesting, but really there's that large Mexican church records of the Catholic Church, which have kind of drawn my attention here. And last but not least, and I think the thing that most of the people that follow us will be interested in, are the South African Dutch Reformed Church records from 1660 through to 1970. You know, 300,000 of those are going to help a lot of people.
They sure are. And then over to Findmypast. It is St. Patrick's Day, so as you would expect, there's some nice Irish records being released here. We're looking at wills and administrations. Always good to get a will for a family member because you start to lead into more detail of other family members as well. But jumping around the UK, we've got some Lincolnshire baptisms, some Suffolk marriage index records hiding in there as well. So if you're in those two counties, maybe there's something there for you. And then some British slavery records from 1883. So although we're only looking at a year, there's 61,000 records, nearly 62,000 records hiding in here. So again, well worth having a bit of a look through to see what else you can find. And then if you have Roman Catholic ancestors, here we have a whole lot of records coming in from the Nottinghamshire diocese, covers Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire, Rutland, Leicestershire and Lincolnshire. So nice little collection from that sort of central part of England coming through as well. And then, as you would expect, the newspaper collections just continue to grow. I've only picked the slide that covered just the recent ones. There's been a whole host of other updated titles in the period that we haven't been talking to you about the news. So go and have a look. There's always something for everyone in there.
And so over at MyHeritage, and they have huge range of resources of family trees. And you might think it's odd we're mentioning family trees, but they are actually a hint to you, just something else to investigate. Sometimes people have attached photos and documents to a tree that you haven't got access to, not seen before. So don't ignore those. They do have them from all sorts of sources, but we go through to their record sets, and there's a handful of nice US records that they've acquired recently. But if you have a really good look about, I'm sure that there's some for those of us down under. And yes, Western Australian birth records and South Australian York Peninsula burials. So definitely worth having a check out there of the MyHeritage updates. They have a heap of news coming out over Roots Tech as well.
They sure do. Now, jumping back to the UK side of things, the genealogist, we know that they're really strong in actually taking that data and mapping it. And here they're starting the process of mapping the UK 1871 census. It just puts your ancestor in place and in time and allows you to look at what else is happening around the area. You know, it's great to know where the local church was. What is the local graveyard or cemetery? You know, how do people relate to each other around the streets, not just an individual on a record or on a page. They've also been looking at the Lloyd George Domesday records as well. And of course, some Irish too, in this case, County Kildare, Catholic Parish Registers. So have a look around there. And there's a few others sneaking onto that slide as well.
And maps are my favourite thing after newspapers and photographs. So it's a bit of a toss-up between them all. And so over in New Zealand, the National Library there, Aotearoa, has the historic free collection. In case you're new to us, you might not know that Australia and New Zealand's historic newspapers are free to all to view. And there's been some recent additions over in Aotearoa, the Auckland Examiner, which is the largest area, wouldn't have been the largest population at the time of these papers though, and the other paper's called Mana, which is far more recent. Will have living people in it for sure.
And it's good to see that range, isn't it, of the dates between what's coming up.
Yeah.
So take over that Tasman to Australia. I don't know how we managed to do New Zealand and Australia this way around, Michelle.
Oh, because it was easier.
Yeah, Trove itself also has a huge list of newspapers, and we recognise how important these are. As Michelle said, it's one of her favourite sources. It's one of my favourite sources. And we know that there's been a lot of support for maintaining Trove and allowing it to continue to grow. And so it's great to see these new newspapers coming in through here as well, right the way across the whole of the country. You know, you're bound to find something in there for someone in your family.
Yeah, lots of them. And then over at the National Archives, wow. So some of them might not know that I'm half British. So I kind of like, everyone says, where's home? And I have 3 of them. And this is another one. And I can't wait to go and actually check this site out a bit further. So the National Archives, that's Kew in the UK, often known as TNA, have digitised 200,000 prisoner of war records. The collection's result of over 400 boxes of records brought from Germany to them to index, and volunteers took 5 years to build this wonderful collection for us. And we did a quick search earlier with just putting a country in, and there's quite a lot of people from New Zealand in the record set. And so I'm going to look forward to seeing my Uncle Jack, actually, who was prisoner of war for 3 months and 3 years, sorry. And I want to go and see what they've got about him, because I have a photograph of everybody from the camp that was passed on to me. So yeah, so there's lots of
interesting.
Yeah, I'm itching to get on a plane, and I'm going to be traveling for another 3 weeks, so we'll have to be patient.
But for some of us that aren't going to quite get to Kew in the near future, you can also request a copy of this as well, or find a very nice researcher at the other side of the world to go and get a copy of one of these for you. But there is enough information on these to identify who that person is. And just referring back to the first slide where we talked about this, they are releasing them after 100 years closure based on date of birth. So there is a little bit of a delay if your ancestor was born after that 100 years as such, or within that 100 years.
Yeah.
But of course, Roots Tech, Michelle.
Yeah.
Go to Roots Tech.
Most fortunate. There's so much news that we're going to do you a special news bulletin next week on the news from Roots Tech as we saw it between the two of us, because there's quite a lot to cover. But as Fee said when she looked at this slide, it's interesting to see the trending topics of what people using the website is looking at and reading about. So DNA is still right up there at the top, as well as people learning how to do family research. So if you're people running a family history group, which I know many of you are, those are the topics you might like to think quite seriously about how you can integrate them more. And because we all need new members to come along and help us with our addiction. Oh, did I say addiction? Hobby, sorry.
Yeah, let's just face it, is an addiction. And for those of us with North American family as well, and for some of us, that's because we've found them through the DNA. June the 1st, the 1931 Canadian census is going to be released. And this is going to be in conjunction with, obviously, the Canadian government, but Ancestry is going to use that really cool technology that they've got now, where they were able to go through the US census so quickly and get it indexed, etc., and they're going to apply that same technology and what they've learned to the Canadian census. So that's not going to take very long at all.
Yeah, it's so exciting to read the new AI information that's really leading the way and helping us get more value out of our records more quickly. And it's lovely to see that Blaine Bettinger has done a blog post today about this unknown family cluster, as he's talking it, and it's like, good heavens, who are these people? Might be what some of us say, even less polite, but most of us down here have a lot of unidentifiable clusters because the volume of people that have tested in Australia and New Zealand is smaller than other countries, so we don't have as many people in our clusters. Though proportionally we've tested higher than any other. Canada, Australia, New Zealand are the highest per capita testers of DNA, but we do get these distant smaller clusters and we think, who are you? So it's nice that he's starting to write about that, because I think the Americans are finally getting down to their unknown clusters.
But you're going to help people with getting into some of these clustering, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm quite excited about this because I'm home for a certain amount of time. It turns out that April Fool's Day is no joke, and my dad always said I start new jobs on the 1st of April just like he did. So I kind of think it's interesting we're going to be able to celebrate. Who knew that Ancestry's been around for 40 years this year? So in conjunction with some of the staff, I've had one commit to being there in the afternoon, but I'm not going to name names because I know how much work can change their lives all of a sudden. We're going to do a focus day completely on the Ancestry website, the news from Roots Tech. We're going to show all sorts of new tools that you might not have used yet, and do some in-depth stuff with how to integrate the DNA results into your family tree that you're building on this site.
And so, Michelle, for those of us that can't make it to Sydney,
yes, it's going to be recorded. This is our first major event doing a hybrid session, and so this is actually our members only gig. So if you're a member of SAG, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, and I know there's lots of us who are members that don't live in Australia all the time, you'll be able to watch the recordings later if the time zone's no good. And there's lots of other benefits to membership of SAG, said she, turning this into an advertisement, but you can always go to the sag.org website and check what the benefits are, because we're offering a special offer for this event where we're waiving the joining fee and saving you $20 if you decide to join and register for the event.
Oh,
and I've noted a couple of people on my Facebook page have already done so.
Excellent. But we're also going to be hanging out together at the 24-hour genealogy webinar marathon. You know, if a day's not enough, let's turn it into 2 days or a day and a night.
Yeah.
On Legacy Family Tree, and both of us are speaking there. Michelle, you're doing your We Remember talk.
Yep. I'm making, and it's going to be modified a bit, so it'll be more global than the talk if you happen to have come across that talk before.
Yeah, and I'll be talking about slow down and planning your research. So we'll see where that comes from.
So I'll be crying and you'll be singing.
Yeah, we'll see how that all goes. So there's been lots of news. We're so glad to be back talking to you and talking to each other as usual. So have a little bit of a look around, and in particular, thanks for watching, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel because we're going to try and do this on a regular basis. So it would be nice to have you along for the ride with us. and letting you know what's been happening out in that world, because let's face it, a whole lot happens within a week, doesn't it, Michelle?
Yes, some weeks the news is really intense, and particularly with Roots Tech, when a lot of the majors have waited to Roots Tech to do their launches. So that's why there will be an extra special news bulletin coming out within a week.
There sure will. So nice to see you all, and we'll talk to you all later.
Bye.
Bye.